How's everybody doing? Give everybody a minute or two to kind of pile in the front door here as we get started on what 2024 is going to look like. Hopefully, buckets of money for everybody. Interest rates will come down, money will flow from the trees. It'll just be a great year for all of us.
Yeah, we got a few attendees jumping in.
Yeah, no, for sure. So,
We're at we're at four right now. So
yeah, no. Um, I'll tell you what we'll do while everybody's coming in. We'll kind of just do our intro a little bit here. And so, my name is Mike Bazar. I'm a CTO and partner at Vector Choice. So I ran an MSP for several years, and then earlier this year, Will and I merged, and so I've been kind of over all the technical operations and everything we're doing here at Vector, but got years of MSP experience from all sides, and then also involved in visibility and what's going on with that on our side. And then the real star of the show, I'm just here as a half a pretty face or something. I don't know. Is Jeff? So Jeff is an expert in I think all things MSP. And so Jeff, you got your cybersecurity company you've done. You've helped people with M&A. You've saved other MSPs from the brink, so to speak, and have just a real wide range. And I think one of the big things to bring in today is a wide range in expertise around compliance and what you guys are doing now as well, because you guys do a lot of that, right?
yeah, we sure do. Thank you for that. Yeah. The my background is I've run two MSPs. One was about 4 million in revenue. The other one was about 15 million in revenue. I've run three or four other companies besides that. And then currently I own a cybersecurity and compliance firm out of Virginia. We're FedRAMP 3PAO, which is an assessor organization. We will be a CMMC assessor organization and a PCI assessor organization, so some other stuff. So we'll talk about some compliance today, and I don't think you're half a pretty face. I think you're a whole pretty face.
I just distract people with my shiny spot on my head here,
Yeah. We'll have some fun talking about this stuff today.
Yeah. And hopefully everybody that's on enjoys talking about compliance and cybersecurity, because if they don't, it probably will be boring. But that's the life we live. So quickly, if you guys want, you can get this the compliance formula book. That QR code will shoot you over to Amazon. That was a book that Will was a part of writing, just about compliance, cybersecurity, or strategies around CMMC. Even if you're not doing CMMC, there's that compliance strategy a lot of the time translates well. And so, you guys can go check out that book if you'd like. And then really quickly, just want to hit a little bit about what is visibility MSP, right? And so we're really there to try to help MSPs avoid losing those cybersecurity and compliance deals. That's the big focus that we've got, because truthfully, like compliance, it's hard. You got to have the right people in place. You have to have the right things in place. You have to have expertise in place. And especially for the smaller to mid-size MSPs, it's a lot to go build. Same thing around cybersecurity. You can do basic cybersecurity pretty easy, but to do real solid, comprehensive, well-monitored, well-managed cybersecurity is kind of a different animal. And as you get scale, you can usually do that well internally, but it can be very hard to do at different company sizes, or as you're just starting to build it and everything else. So we are white glove, white label cybersecurity and compliance, where we will come in and be as a white label service to help you do compliance for your customers, maybe for you to try to expand and look and do compliance or cybersecurity for clients that you might not have gone looking for because you weren't sure how to do those things, and you've avoided that industry or those compliance things. And that can bring in a lot. Good examples of where this works even is we recently had on the Vector side a customer that was in accounting, and we sold them another $2,000 a month on compliance services for FTC safeguards and some of these other things, where we showed the value through the tracking and the creating the artifacts and everything else, much past just saying, sure, we'll give you a written information security plan. That's easy to do, right? So it's that complexity that adds real value and can add real dollars, and we're here as visibility to help do that. And that's that's really what we're there for. So there's Will and myself, John DePero's Chief Compliance Officer, Bo Dickey's CSO, Jeff is here as our expert in I don't know, I'd say everything, because as you heard before, he's kind of touched a lot of places. And then Sarah helps kind of keep the wheels on the bus and everything going forward. And so a little bit of why I kind of hit on this earlier, but it's just help MSPs compete against mega MSPs without the complexity and the overhead, right? It's a whole lot easier to come to a company and say, hey, I have this deal, help me win it. And we can go do that. And you don't have to go build a compliance department or a team or anything else. You can just say, I need help with this and it's revenue. And then we can say, hey, it's going to cost X. We go mark it up. We can go help you do that. Will and myself and John DePero and Jeff, we coached a ton of MSPs on a lot of things, right? Sales, marketing, compliance, security, kind of you name it. We do a lot of coaching through that to try to help MSPs grow and improve what they're doing. And visibility ends up kind of being an extension of a lot of that, so that you can, really provide that security and compliance out to clients and not lose them. Because the other side of that is if you are offering these services, and that's why I want to talk about a lot of this today, is other MSPs are, and they're going to come eat your lunch, because they're going to be able to come in and offer bigger, more complex solutions that align with business interests better than commoditized MSP services. And so as we continue to progress through the year and the years, if you don't pick up these services, you're going to end up getting left behind a lot of places. So I don't know, Jeff, do you have anything to kind of offer on the visibility side?
I think you nailed it.
All right, great. So kind of getting into the 2024 outlook, right? There's a lot that changes over time. We all know that. If you've been in MSP or even technology for a while, it changes. I kind of laugh because I got out of this for a little bit. So my kids want a gaming computer for Christmas. And so they've been talking about how to save up and buy parts and all this other stuff. And so I've been digging through it, but I use it as the analogy of this. Like, I've been out of that stuff for a while. So I couldn't have told you a couple of weeks ago what video cards were the best and what processors were really the best for all. I could tell you for what you need for a computer for work and all the other crap, but I just haven't built a gaming computer, really dug into it and looked at it. And so I think it is a good analogy for all this, is that it changes so much. The MSP space, the technology space, the business space is changing so very, very often that we really need to have these conversations. And I think the best time to do it is as you look and plan for next year. What is it that you want to do? What do you want to be involved in? What do you want to go after? What markets are you going to target? Those questions should be coming up as you're doing end of year planning. And a lot of that, hopefully we can help add a piece as visibility to say, now you can go chase compliancy deals or these other things you might not have thought that you could have chased in the past, because we can help you do that. And part of that is we just want to go through some of these things that are coming up and changing and really talk about it. And so one of the big things I think we all know about, I mean, there's a few things on here, but AI is big and it's coming and it's changing a lot, right? There are a lot of use cases for AI, data analysis and just helping things like I use, Chat GPT sometimes to help me craft an email or rewrite something in a softer tone or correlate data or whatever it is. And the beauty of it, and this is where I think a lot of it, we can even show customers, even if you just take them and show them how to use Chat GPT or stuff that's out there, they can use it of like, how can they use it in the meeting when they're trying to talk about something and on the fly look for answers and look things up in Chat GPT or rewrite this or do that, where you can do this really quick work on the fly, and AI will really help that. I think one of the big things, and I was just talking about this beforehand, that we're looking at using is, I think there's two sides of AI in the MSP. One of them is on the back end. And so we're actually looking at a product called Crush Bank and deploying that, where it'll help aggregate all your tickets and your compliance or your documentation, say from IT Glue or IT Boost or whatever app you use. You can give it access to your teams if you want and everything else. And it pulls all in and aggregates it. So when you open a ticket, it'll say, hey, here's a similar ticket that was opened a year ago. Here's the information out of IT Glue. They even showed it'll search the internet. So if somebody turns in a ticket and it says Fortinet and VPN, it'll go search Fortinet's database of help looking for VPN solutions that might relate and pull all that up. And that'll be a huge time saver, I think, and make it so our techs work better. And then I think in the MSP space, the other side of AI is there's a lot of tools where they're trying to get scripting and problem solving for your customers. So if a customer can use a chat bot type thing and say, my printer's not working, and it can script and run different scripts to try to solve that problem without getting techs involved. And I think it's really important to continue to look at how is this going to impact our customers, either from the support we deliver or what AI is creeping into their own systems that they'll need to use, right? And really trying to pay attention to that, because there's a lot of stuff that come in that you can see, like Microsoft, what's the Copilot that they have released, and it's going to help in Word and Excel and all these other things. Now, the way it's been released is kind of 300 users and more, and enterprise, and it's all or none, and it's pretty expensive. So in the SMB space, it's going to be a little harder to pull that in, but it's going to come down eventually, right? Microsoft's going to work out all those things in the business model at the big space, like they do a lot, and then they're going to bring it down. And you can either be offering that stuff to your customers or lose those customers to somebody who is using that and is looking to do it. And so I think there's a lot there to make sure you're looking at, AI and what does that look like and how does that impact, and how can we help our customers really utilize that in their business. Jeff, do you guys have any AI instances where you're seeing things?
Yeah. One of the things I think it kind of goes in the AI bucket, but it's really tangential, is process automation.
Yeah.
Right. And so whether it's the PIAs and the roosts and those class of tools, I do think that this year we're going to get a bigger bump from what I'm going to call automation, and I think it will have an AI component to it, right?
Yeah.
And so I think any MSP that's not looking forward to that and not at least paying attention to that, I think that's a mistake.
Yeah. No, I agree. I was talking with an MSP buddy of mine who's out in California, and they use Atera, I think, for their PSA. And he said it's got a huge AI component that they've built into it. And they've gotten rid of a ton of their level 1 tickets because they've used it to help identify and run scripts in the background. And now their techs are basically confirming it's fixed and closing a ticket and not doing that work, because the AI that's built into it is kind of analyzing that and running what it thinks is the best scripts and some other things. And so I agree, it falls into that process automation AI bucket where there's a lot of it coming. And if you can stay on it and stay ahead of it, I think there's a whole lot of efficiency to be gained within our businesses. And then I think as technology advisors, how do we bring that to clients and try to help them look at their tools and everything else? And I think there'll be a lot that'll come out of, like accounting, legal, some of those that have fairly static data, right? I mean, financial data, once it's there, but AI will help analyze trends, and it'll help look up case law and all these other things to stop people from having to read 7,000 books and articles to go find the right information. It'll just be able to go, here's the 5 that are relevant.
No, absolutely. So I think those are super important. All the PSA. So I'm, talking to all the different vendors. Every single one of them have a roadmap for how they embed AI.
Yeah.
And, so whether it's within the PSA, whether it's, like you said, an external tool that's you bolt on, whatever, that's definitely a trend in 2024.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think you'll see a lot kind of, I don't know, running through these a little bit, and running them together. But I think as we look at more and more cloud, multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, 365 and what they're offering is continuing to grow, and gets into a lot of the hybrid cloud where we're starting to push more and more people. They may have, an on-prem QuickBooks server, but everything else can move to the cloud or whatever it is. Some of it, you can move all of it to the cloud. Just tell people to get QuickBooks Online and stop trying to run the app. But even that, like, I think QuickBooks this year just announced that, is it next year or the year after, they're going to stop selling on-prem QuickBooks. They're not going to do it anymore. You got to buy QuickBooks Online. And so I think we're going to see a lot of movement to that. And again, it'll either be a scramble when the vendors quit selling it and push it, or we can help people move and identify those opportunities to move into the cloud and look at how do we move people up that way. IoT management is going to get bigger and bigger, mostly because of the security side, I think, right? Everybody's already putting smart thermostats in, but I would also go venture to say there's a lot of MSPs that aren't VLANing that off. They aren't doing the things they need to separate and segment it and manage it. And so we're going to get more and more of these IoT devices, whether it's in manufacturing. It's somewhere, I was trying to remember, my Facebook or something weird. It actually popped up, and it was like a vibration monitoring system for machinery. And it's all little IoT devices, right? They put it in there. When the vibration gets too high, it kicks off over Wi-Fi and says, there might be a problem here. And I think more and more of that stuff is going to come into the technology world, and it's going to be us as MSPs that are trying to go manage that, and make sure it's secure, because the IoT guys aren't thinking about that a lot of the time, and that it works for businesses and what they're doing. And again, I think if we want to get to that real trusted advisor, IT consultant, technology consultant role, if you're selling in those environments, it's going to be our job to understand what those IoT pieces are. How do they impact the business? How can we potentially help bring them in, optimize them, make them run well, and improve their business? Because that's what they're looking at us to do. And if we don't do it, somebody else is going to come in and do it. Some competitor or somebody's going to come in and say they do it. Kind of like you see right now in like a lot of dental and other stuff, where Henry Schein and these big guys, they're selling IT services. They're coming in and they're saying we can do that too, because the IT guys aren't embracing the dental technology enough. There's still a big enough wall that, these guys are coming in and they're breaking the wall down and they're taking people's business while they do it. So I think that'll be a real big thing. Do you guys see any trends in the stuff that you're doing with the IoT or cloud stuff, Jeff?
As you said, it's all progressing, right? The IoT stuff, I give that. We're seeing some customers that are doing some interesting things, but in general, that's not really where it is. Of course, cloud is huge.
Yeah.
And that's, I can see in a fairly short period of time when the concept of, hey, I've got servers on site is just insane.
Yeah.
Right. Even for bigger customers, some of my really large customers have, I've got one in particular, they're probably 4,000 users. They used to have about 400 servers. They're down to like 70. So, I mean,
Yeah.
and that's within a year. Within 12 months, they moved that much stuff to the cloud. They moved into SaaS products.
Yeah.
And they haven't even moved their ERP system yet. So when you take somebody who had 400 servers and you get them down to say less than 20,
Yeah.
So those are all opportunities, I think, for everybody. You know, that's what I'm saying there.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that brings up, like you said, the edge computing thing is like right now, I think more and more and more as we look at this, and well, there's some stuff a little bit later about zero trust and everything else, but like we just had our planning session this last week, and we were talking about on the engineering side, like I don't know that we care what routers people have. I mean, there's a few brands and we want them to necessarily, have it. It's better if they have these firewalls for their offices, but we have to architect these systems with SASE and everything else around the fact that people aren't in the office and they're working from everywhere. And so if the firewall is the core of the security, you're missing it, right? So that edge integration becomes a really big deal where everybody's moving outside of the walled garden. That's been happening for years, but it's definitely been sped up, and I think it continues to happen. And security is going to catch up, I think, in the next year or so, if it hasn't, as it keeps moving down to go, how do we secure these devices so they can work from anywhere, whether it's home or in the coffee shop or on the road or in the airport or the hotels or wherever. And we've seen a lot of that, but I still think there's a lot of MSPs out there and a lot of that small to medium business market that has not architected that solution fully. And so they're still got, well, we have EDR on it, but we don't have all these other products potentially that we need to make sure that that stays secure as it moves in and out of that walled garden, and really looking at that edge computing and how does that work and integrate to the cloud servers and to everything else. So everything just works everywhere.
Right.
So,
absolutely. Especially things like your SIM, vault scanning, all those kinds of products that typically are more focused on the in the office.
Yeah.
Like you said, everybody's got EDR, but you really need to move into more of an MDR, XDR type solution. It needs to incorporate all the cloud services. You got to have APIs tied in. And so, yeah, that's just the way of the future. Just
no, it is. And that's why I say a lot of those times when people look at that MSPs and whatever, they may say that's difficult. And that's why we're here to have the conversation. Like these difficult things are coming. And if you can't architect it, we can help you, and that's the real big piece of it. So.
I even get people who keep saying, I've got several business owner friends that are saying, oh, no, we're going back in the office. I'm like, no, you're not. You think you are. And I've had a couple that tried to force it. and,
Yeah.
lost 30% of their staff kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because they feel like they have that need. So I think we're all going to have, I mean, unless you're a manufacturing and you make a widget and you got to have the guys in the plant.
Yeah.
But hell, give it enough time, robots will make that shit.
Yeah.
So, at some point, all businesses are gonna have this problem.
Yeah.
No problem. Have this opportunity. Let's call it that.
Yeah. No, and it's interesting you say, like, because back to the office, because I think even internal on the vector choice side, we deal with this, that a big portion of the company is remote. And then here in Lubbock, we've got the office, and there's another one in New Bern. But it's funny because we'll send these guys something, like we had one of the guys who went home, his wife was having a baby and everything else, and he asked to come back to the office because he wanted to be up here, and it was easier for him to work and everything else. And so I think there's going to be a lot where you'll see this stuff change, because what we're seeing is it's easier to have like tier 1, tier 2 guys in the office. It's easier to train them. It's easier to get them geared up and doing what they're doing. But when you hit the engineering level and security and compliance, those guys all want to work from home, and they don't need to be in the office, and they can do that just as well from anywhere. And so I think that's it, is it's just, and I think it'll continue to move further out. But at this point, we still have a mix of people that are here. But like I say, I mean, I think, yeah, more and more people, they just want to work from home, and they don't want to drive all the way across Houston to an office. Like, why spend 45 minutes in traffic when it doesn't change how I do my job? I'm going to do the same thing at home. I'm just going to plug into a different docking station.
I've got one employee and he wants to work from the office, but he's, 10, 15, 20 years older than everybody else. And that's just his comfort zone, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No. And I think there may be a little bit of a push in some of it because like me in my instance right now, I've got a work from home setup, but I've got 4 kids. So like, there's a lot of time I'd rather be in the office because it's just quieter and the kids aren't around and everything else. But I'm building the shop, and in that shop that's detached from the house, I'm putting in an office, and then I'll work from there a lot more than I will from here when I have the environment for it. So it makes a big difference. So kind of moving on to compliance and just kind of talking about that a little bit. CMMC, I think, Jeff, you're way more of an expert around that than I am. And so I don't know if you want to kind of dive into that one.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So right now, the rule actually went through the White House Office of Management budget a couple months ago, has come out now under some public commentary. I fully expect that we'll see that rule finalized Q1. I mean, maybe it pushes to Q2, but I don't really think so. I think we're definitely going to see it early in the year. Now it won't trigger DFARS clauses. If you're not familiar with CMMC, it's basically subcontractors or contractors that work with the Department of Defense. And essentially China has focused on those suppliers, and that's where they do most of the intellectual theft, intellectual property theft. So the DoD has essentially said, we told you guys what the rules were, but you weren't following them. So now we're going to send assessors around to be sure you're following them.
Yeah.
And if you don't, you can't bid on those contracts. You can't work for the DoD anymore. So that's in a nutshell. That's what that's about. We've been waiting on this rule for now 4 years, and so it's finally coming to fruition. You typically will know if you have clients that have CMMC requirements. If you don't, I suggest you revamp your QBR and TBR process so that you do know. That's fundamental for them. And in that situation, it's very rare that an MSP actually has this skill set. This is a particular skill set that you should reach out. Visibility can help with. And not only can the consulting happen, but we will also drive additional product revenue because they'll have to have tools and so forth.
Yeah.
But I consider CMMC I consider 2024 the year of CMMC, true CMMC version 2. PCI 4.0, same thing.
Yeah.
We've been on 3.0 for I don't know how many years now. And this is a reasonably sizable change. For a lot of people, I'm not sure how much it's actually going to affect them, especially if they use, like the Clover devices, or some of those things that the compliance will be built into those devices. But you may have clients that are more sophisticated than that, and require different PCI forms. And so obviously, if you have those, we have experts that can help with those forms, whether you need to segment a network diagrams, whatever, or even interpreting what the rules are.
Yeah.
So we can help with all of that.
And I think one of the things that's always interesting to me, because like I say, some people PCI 4 makes an impact and some it doesn't. But I think one of the best things from a strategy perspective and a business perspective is if you never did a good job talking about PCI 3, now's a perfect time to say PCI 4 is coming and let's talk about your requirements and is it, and then you don't feel like you're way behind the 8 ball, you're now ahead, and you can go and have some of those hey, how do you accept credit cards? What does that look like? Do you have those requirements? And then if they start to have those requirements and don't know, it's an engagement even just to help go do the audits and other things. And even one of the things John DePero always likes to point out, our compliance officers, a lot of the time, not even under PCI, just under the credit card agreements. Those credit card companies now, the processors are putting things in their contracts and saying, you're going to agree to VLAN all of the traffic or whatever. And if you aren't, the company is now liable for any fraud and all this other stuff that potentially might happen, right? So there's even pieces that might not necessarily fall under, say, a PCI. It's just the agreement you had with the processor. And so it's a really great time to kind of step back, look at those with your customers that they take a lot of credit cards and really analyze it. And the more you talk about it, the more you'll see these things pop up. We've had a couple of customers recently. We've been having conversations about PCI. They weren't compliant. And then now they're like, hey, Amex is charging me an extra $500 a month per site because they're basically buying additional insurance because we're not compliant. And they're making me pay for it. And so now they want to come back and do compliance. And so again, I think like the CMMC, there's going to be more enforcement and pushing down, because a lot of these guys are losing their shirts. And that's the real problem, is they're losing a ton of money on it. And so they want to push the risk as far down as they can. And then real quick, before I forget, and going back to CMMC, the one thing I think is interesting about that too is, and a lot of people, I think the companies that need it know it, but a lot of what MSPs miss, and this is why it's such a big opportunity, is if you go in and say, hey, you have to deploy $5,000 or $10,000 worth of months to be compliant, it's either their business shuts down, totally pivots, or they do it. And so you can get into some of these really big dollar deals where if you do it right, they have to do it. And they don't begrudge it, because they're just going to build it into the cost and bill it out to the contract, the DoD or whatever else a lot of the time. I mean, they don't love it, but it is one of those things where there are certain things sometimes, and CMMC is one of those, where it's either their business stops selling to the government or they have to be compliant. Those are the options. It's not like they can just hope to skate by. They'll lose contracts and they'll lose business. And so if they are built around that, then they really have to analyze whether they want to do these things or not. Or you'll get people that'll kind of skirt PCI or HIPAA and go, we'll deal with it when we get caught or whatever. But CMMC, I think, will come down a lot harder and a lot faster, because the DoD doesn't want the intellectual property theft. Like, it's a national security issue, not just a general security issue or fraud issue or whatever else.
To piggyback on that, Mike, we actually do find clients that literally don't realize they have the DFAR clauses in their contracts. And those DFAR clauses are what actually trigger these rules. And so, they've either ignored it, or they've checked a box that said, hey, we're complying, when they're not. Yeah. They've not submitted a SPUR score. They've not even calculated a SPUR score. If you're in that world, you know what that is. If not, don't worry about it. And so a lot of times they've actually committed fraud, and technically could be prosecuted on the False Claims Act. I was going to say Fair Claims. It's not fair. It's False Claims Act. So, there's some actual real teeth behind the False Claims Act people don't realize. Now, what's the chances they're going to go after a mom and pop shop doing it? Probably not that big. They're more likely to go after a Northrop or a Boeing or a Lockheed or somebody like that. But
yeah,
the point is, these rules exist. They are rolling them out. It is a big deal. There is opportunity for you in it. And more than anything, you want to be strategic with your client to understand what their compliance requirements are, whether it's CMMC, PCI. Another one on here is FTC safeguards, which is commonly called GLBA, Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act. The SEC has got new rules out. FDA Part 11 is out. I mean, every government entity is, SEC's got new stuff out. So every damn entity is deciding to pick their own, which is crazy. But it is driving behavior in our clients.
Yeah. No, it really is. And that's why I think, and that's why like FTC safeguards really was June is when that went into effect, but I think it's going to carry over. And even on that, like I was talking to, again, John DePero the other day, like a lot of CPAs and other people accounting that do tax returns and stuff, like they know the IRS rules, but the FTC safeguards are tougher than the IRS rules and they both apply. So there's a lot of these things where you just have to go in and talk to them. And again, everybody's going to eventually get pushed there. And so if you haven't been talking to customers about FTC safeguards and you don't know who falls under it, like that's where reach out, we can help. Because you've got to go and start talking to them, because otherwise somebody else is going to come in and do it. And then they're going to be the trusted advisor before you are, because they're going to help solve a problem and bring it up. Because again, I think most businesses generally want to comply because they want to sleep well. They don't want the risk. They want, like that's just what they want. Some of the businesses will, balance cost against it or phase it in or whatever, depending on what the compliance is. But there's a lot of them out there. And I think too, and I think I might've missed the bullet point earlier, but the other thing, even with these is, and it's not truly compliance, I guess, as much as it's just a contract, but like cybersecurity insurance, that's changed a lot over the last 12 months, is going to continue to change because all those insurance companies lost their shirt. And there was the example earlier this year of a company, I forget who it was, Travelers or somebody, paid out. And then they went back and sued the company for their premiums and for everything back, because they found out those people were not complying with the agreement. Like they had 2-factor turned off on some accounts or whatever it was. So they said, hey, you didn't comply with the agreement. We want all our money back. And they won the lawsuit. And so I've heard the rumblings through John DePero and some other people. I don't know what's going to come of it. And I don't certainly want to say it, fear mongering or any other thing, but I don't know that it's not that far off that this insurance companies start countersuing people for fraud if they're seeing it, because they had to put resources into coming out and finding out that you didn't comply with the agreement. And they're going to say, you got to pay for all those people we just sent out to do forensics, and figure out that you weren't doing the job you said you were going to do. Right. And so it really starts to become this thing where we can't just tell people you need to do it and then not do it. Like if it's a law, if it's a contract, we need to say, here's what you need to do. Here's what you need to do to comply. And we want to help you get there. And that can be hard to do, which is again, kind of why we're here to help do those things and help and see. And we've got, and then Jeff, you got anything to add here at the end, but we've got the QR code here. You can scan or hit the website, visibilitymsp.com. And you guys want to talk about potential opportunities or anything else you might have and how we can help you do those things. But what do you have kind of closing thoughts here, Jeff?
One of the things you just said, the insurance companies, actually several insurance carriers are now starting to put monitoring software on the network. So they're actually periodically, call it a light vuln scan, or really almost a light pen test. And so, over the last 2 to 2.5, 3 years, the insurance carriers lost their ass on cyber insurance. And so you can really take one of 3 routes. You can increase premiums dramatically. You can just flat deny coverage, because you can always find a loophole to deny coverage. Or, you can make the deductibles just insane. I've got one client right now, and they decided on $250,000 deductibles. Okay, well, I mean, basically all you're doing is insuring against a major outage.
Yeah.
But so,
and I would guess it still wasn't cheap, even with a $250,000.
Right, exactly. And so, but ultimately, in the end, when you're talking about, RMM and patching and those kinds of things, that's plumbing. That's not strategic for your client. What makes you sticky for your client is strategy.
Yeah.
And strategy is knowing their business. Strategy is understanding how they operate. And that means you understand their business apps. That means you understand their insurance requirements. And that means they understand their compliance requirements. Yeah. And when you start talking about that kind of stuff, then you now are at a much different level and kind of, and I know it's an overused term, but a trusted advisor. The reality is that's what gets you there. And if you don't have that skill set, visibility can give it to you.
Yeah.
And so that's really the key there. That's all I've got.
No, and I think that's good. I mean, I agree. I think it's all changing, and like you say, everybody's like the insurance guys are just they're driven by their own profit motives and everything else. They don't want to lose their shirt. They want to sell coverage, and so they're going to go back and do it. And on top of that, back to kind of the how do you make sure you're the right advisor and don't get unseated is like insurance companies, they're selling EDR now. They're offering security awareness training. They're offering all these other products because they're easy to roll out. They're commodity type products, and they're doing it to try to save their own ass. And you can either get ahead of it or you're going to start losing business and other things because somebody's going to go, hey, my insurance company gave me all these things. I want a discount on my service because I don't want to pay for your EDR anymore. They gave it to me. And then you got to have a whole different conversation with that customer. And you'd much rather be way ahead of it where you're talking about, making them compliant and all these other things instead of being on the back foot playing defense against they're offering this and this and this, and it's in your package and I don't want it anymore, or whatever those kinds of things are. So, I think the big thing I would push and say and take away is what we want to try to help people do with visibility is to become more strategic, to help have better and higher level conversations with their customers. And so, if you've got those opportunities or question, if you do, or whatever, reach out, grab a couple of minutes and talk through some of that stuff, and we can figure out, what we can help you with and whatnot. So other than that, I don't have anything.
Okay.
All
Yeah,
right.
I've been looking at the Q&A box, so we don't have anything in there. I don't know if anybody's got any questions. We've got a few minutes left, right?
Yeah. I mean, if anybody had any questions, we can
Anybody
certainly.
has any questions they want to throw in there? It doesn't really matter what the subject is. Mike and I, we'll field just about any question, as long as it's not immoral or illegal.
Yeah.
You know.
And immoral, we might tiptoe on the edge of that
Yeah, I
one.
was gonna say, I just maybe, but
So, all right. Well, I'm not seeing anything pour in here from Q&A or chat. So, again, I'd say if you do have other questions or stuff, you guys can certainly scan the QR code, grab a few minutes, and happy to talk to anybody about any of those questions that might come up if you can't get them in. But appreciate everybody, and you guys all have a fantastic end of the year and a Merry Christmas.
yes, happy holidays, guys.